What is up, you Apple developer enthusiasts? Welcome back to the Let's Be Noobs channel where we explore Apple gaming technologies, which, fingers crossed, boys and girls, which we truly hope will make it to the AAA games we all love. Today we will be discussing the sceneKit scene editor, which is sceneKit's 3D mini 3D engine for creating 3D scenes. It's awesome, and I think you guys are gonna love this. All right, so let's get right into it. Getting started, we are just gonna click on not playground. Sorry, we are going to click on. Excuse me. New project, right? And we will open up. We will use the gaming template today, right? And make sure you have sceneKit selected over there. Don't have spreaDKit because spreaDKit's for 2D, right? Unit tests and UI tests don't really matter. I'm going to name this sceneKit TUT, right? And click on next. Make sure you also have Swift selected over here. Objective C is for the Apple goons. We are not Apple goons. We are noobs. Apple noobs. All right. Okay. So when this fires up, you'll get this view over here, which I'm not going to discuss. Go ahead and click on the scn assets folder over here and open that. Click on the ship.scn. So the sceneKit scene editor is pretty much this, right? This file here, .scn file, is the sceneKit scene editor file, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that, remove that for now, for this video. We're not gonna use that today. Right, so getting started with the sceneKit scene editor, you see this area over here, this panel over here, which is called the scene graph. This is where all the nodes in your scene go, your lights, your cameras, and your geometry and everything else that you need. So this is how you design your scenes, and all your nodes that you use go right over here. Reference nodes from other sceneKit s.scn files will pop up here, you know. So let me just show you exactly what I mean. When you click on this plus button right in the corner, in the right corner, this one over here, click on that and you get this cool new view, which is very awesome. And you have all sorts of nodes here. These are all nodes, excuse me, revert that. These are all nodes over here, right? You have your light nodes, all sorts of light nodes, omnidirectional light, you have an area light, IES lights, which are actually cool photometric lights, and you have your geometry. You also have a camera node over here, which we will use frequently in this channel, all right? And then you have your geometry over here. So when you want to add a new node to the scene, click and hold on it and drag and drop it onto the scene, all right? I do not want a plane, so let me just grab a few boxes, a box and maybe a sphere, drag and drop onto the scene, and there you have your mesh over there, geometry, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a sphere as well, all right? And there we go. We have two nodes in the scene that we have just added. And if you look on the scene graph area over here, you can see all the nodes right in there. I'm going to go ahead and zero out everything. These are the inspectors over here. We will discuss that shortly. 0, 0. So that makes sure that everything is in the origin of the scene, which is the 0 position. Mathematical geniuses will know exactly what I'm on about. Sadly, I'm not. I'm trying to get better at it, which I will one day. All right. I mean, if you're trying to take this gaming gaming developing things seriously. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to learn a bit of math, you know? All right, so we have both of the nodes right in the origin of the scene. This is the grid right here. Um, yeah, this is pretty much the grid, and this is very helpful um, to gauge where the geometry sits on the scene. You know, it's very helpful. I like to have this open for the most part when I am prototyping scenes and stuff. So in order to move objects around in the scene, oh, before that, panning the scene is as simple as using the left mouse button, the regular mouse button, which is what I like to call it, and you just hold the regular mouse button, which is your left mouse button, and you drag around and pretty much rotating the scene. All right. And to pan around the scene, you hold down Alt, and you with the hold down Alt along with your left mouse button, and you pan around easily on the scene. As you can see, we are panning around and everything is working perfectly. All right, so there are two camera modes that I'd like to discuss today. There are a few. If you go down to the bottom tray over here, this section over here, um, you get this button over here just next to the default lighting button, the lighting button over here. You get this one, and you get the different camera modes sceneKit provides. All right, so the two I'd like to discuss is the turnable and the fly. We have already discussed the turnable camera mode, which is the basic one, the standard default one, and then there's the fly one. This camera mode is my personal favorite camera mode because I personally enjoy playing first person shooter games. So this gives me that feeling that I am in first person, right? So if you have your WASD fingers ready on the buttons, you can press S to move backwards, press W to move forward, A side, and D side, as if you were in a first person game. So in order to move around the scene, along with your left mouse button, dragging on the scene, click, drag, and move around. So you can move around like that, you know, move around by clicking and dragging, moving around, which is why I love this camera mode. It's my personal favorite. All right, so the next thing I'd like to discuss is moving objects around the scene, which is pretty straightforward, right? In order to move an object around the scene, you have these manipulators, right? You have the rotation manipulators. You have the these are more like moving on a certain axis and they don't move anywhere else, these middle ones. So you have three manipulators. You have these arrows over here, which is to move geometry around, right? And you have the rotation manipulators, which is to rotate something around. Let me use this rather. So in order to rotate, you have these rotation manipulators. And bear in mind, you need to make sure that before you click on it, when you hover over the manipulators, they need to turn orange in order for you to actually be able to use the manipulators. So if it's orange and you drag and click and drag, then you are able to use the manipulator. All right, and then you have these manipulators right here in the middle, which is pretty much to move the object on a specified axis, right? So this is, if you can watch the mouse, right, it's moving on this one axis. It's not moving that way, you know. Hopefully you guys get what I'm saying over there. And yeah, that's pretty much moving meshes around the scene. It's as simple as that. All right, so moving on, I want to create a few instances of this cube right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and zero everything out and make sure that the Euler, oh, the Euler is the rotation pretty much. So when you rotate an object around, as you can see, the values there are changing. So the Euler is the rotation and the scale is the size of the object. So I want to scale this on the y-axis to actually have more of a rectangular shape. I'm going to put 3 in there, and that is going to give us that sort of shape. All right. So I don't want this to be rotated. I want it to be straight right in the origin of the scene. Okay. When you have an object selected, right? So as you can see over there, the box is selected. When you have an object selected and you click the F button, F key on your keyboard, it frames the object, right? And when you rotate when you rotate around the scene, whoops, I need to have the turnable camera mode on. So when you rotate around the scene and you have the object framed, the turnable camera mode will automatically rotate around the object. All right, and frame rotate around the object. uh, Maybe I didn't mention this. In order to zoom out, you hold down the option key and you use the middle mouse button to zoom in and out. Probably didn't mention that because I jumped straight to the fly camera mode, which is all right. So I have this object, right? And I want to make instances of it without having to click up here and create a new instance of it, right? So in order to do that, you hold down the option key, and when one of the manipulators are orange, you can actually select, click, and drag, and you will make an instance of that node, right? So now you have two nodes that are the same node, but this one, the second one that we've just created, is the instance of the first one, right? So when we select both of them, I just want to select both of them and create two more and move them that way, right? So this time I actually want to snap them. So I want to move them in a place that makes it in a position that makes it equal between the two positions. And in order to do that, you hold down the option key and the command key, and when you move, when you drag the selected objects out, you create a duplicate, you create another instance, right? But now with the command key pressed down, you are snapping these out. Let me just do that again. Oops. Select both of these. Zoom out. Option, command, left mouse button, and drag. Right. As you can see, you get blue manipulators over here. Right. These blue manipulators are pretty much guides for snapping. So if you want to snap certain things together, you use the blue guides to snap things together, right? I don't know why it's not working over there. There we go. See? So that snaps these two together. So Alt Command, left mouse button, and when you see the blue highlights, just know that it's gonna snap to that, and it just looks seamless. All right. So since we have that, we can just move this. Oops. Move this. Yeah, you see what just happened there? If it's not highlighted at orange, then the scene just does its own thing, right? And I'll get to the orthographic cameras in a second. I just want to move this here just to demonstrate something. We have this bar at the bottom right here, right? So if you click on this, as you can see, there's a nice camera icon over there. When you click on it, you open up this view over here. I don't know what to call it. It's pop up. Um, these are all the cameras in the scene, right? You have your perspective camera, which is the main camera that you use to navigate the scene. And then you have your orthographic, I don't know how to pronounce this, orthographic cameras, which are your top, side, left, right, front and back cameras. Those are very helpful in certain situations, and you will notice why in future videos. And then any other cameras that you add to the scene, let us do that. Camera, drag and drop that. Where is it? Just move this that away. Wait. Using this could be trippy at first, especially if you're coming from a 3D software like Blender. I'm not sure about Unreal and stuff. I haven't really used Unity and stuff like that, so I'm not sure how the 3D scene works. But I know in like Blender and Maya, it's a bit different. sceneKit feels a whole lot different. The sceneKit scene editor. All right. So since we have that camera over there and it's selected, we can click and view into the camera, and now we are viewing through the camera node that we have just added. Awesome, right? In the same bar at the bottom over here, we have a play button. So this pretty much plays any animations that you have created in your scene. And I'm gonna click play. Wait, before that, I'll get to all the inspectors in a moment. I'm just gonna do that, right? So when you click play down here, any animations in your scene will be played pretty much. I'm gonna add the static one. So when you click play over there, everything looks good. I think I know why it looks weird. The the physics shape is not the same. Remember, we actually made this, extracted it or extended it and made it bigger on the y-axis. So the physics shape is not the same. The physics shape is still the small square that we had at first. Anyway, that is news for another day. Moving on to the inspectors, right? So here we have our file inspector. This is the file inspector, or the scene inspector rather. It calculates, or it lets us know how many polygons we have in our scene, and this is actually very good um, for trying to keep your game light and optimized for performance. So in the ability to know how many polygons are in your scene is very helpful in a whole lot of situations, because there are certain rules that you need to bear in mind, that a certain polygon count could decrease the number of draw calls and frames depending on how much textures and how many polygons and lighting and all these, like shadows and all that stuff. So you need to have an easy way to keep count of the number of polys in your scene, and this inspector does a great job at doing that. All right, so moving on, we are going to skip these two. It's just the help editor and the history editor. I mean, the history inspector and the help inspector. And we are going to jump onto the node inspector, right? So this is the node inspector. It tells us where our nodes are, what position they are in our scene. And it's very helpful for prototyping, especially with the grid turned on, because you can actually try to gauge where everything is, you know. Then we have our attribute inspector. So this inspector inspects the attributes of our nodes, right? So selecting this, I'm gonna click frame just to frame the circle over there. If you could look on the edges of the circle, you could see that it's not really smooth, right? That's because we only have 24 segments, right? So if we bump this up a bit, let's put it at 50, click enter. As you can see, that highlight looks a little bit cleaner, you know, which is great depending. And this could probably increase the number of polys in your scene. So you need to keep in mind how many segments, or how many, yeah, segments are on your node. Basically, pretty much you'd actually do that in the 3D tool like Maya, and move your scene into sceneKit, which is for another video. But my advice is to, oh well, Apple's advice actually is to save your files in DAE files and move them, because they actually export with everything in your scene. The lighting and the textures that you have in your 3D software will export in that DAE file, which simplifies a lot of headache when it's time to move on to Maya. I mean, onto sceneKit for that, you know. And then we have our material inspector. This is for adding textures to your nodes. I'm gonna go ahead and switch up the color. Where is the first node? Since we used we created instances of this node, which are all these other nodes. When we change the color of that one node, all of the nodes will change because they are instances of this node, right? Which is pretty cool sometimes, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it helps us with a whole lot of stuff we don't have to have headaches over, you know. So moving on, and then these are all your texture maps. You have your ambient occlusion map that you can plug in there, and it can help with a whole lot of shadowing, make your scenes look realistic. It's very awesome. And we also have normal maps and all sorts of maps, like displacement maps. And yeah, that's the material inspector. Then we have our physics inspector, right? So this is one that you guys probably look forward to using. So this inspector right over here is the physics inspector. You get physics bodies, different physics bodies, static, dynamic, kinematic. Uh, just a short explanation of all these different physics bodies. Static means your objects will never move. They are going to sit there and stare at you the whole time, right? Dynamic means your objects will move and they will react to certain physics situations, like bouncing off a wall, or bouncing off like a tennis ball. And then kinematic means the objects will move, but they are dense objects, pretty much. So think of the static object as the floor or the ground, and the dynamic object as a tennis ball, and the kinematic object as a moving car, you know? So when you throw the tennis ball towards the moving car, the car will not move, but the tennis ball will actually ricochet and bounce elsewhere, all right? And then we have our scene inspector, right? Wait, what's the difference between this? This is the file inspector, and this is the scene inspector. Okay, so this you can plug in nice cube maps um, that actually make the scenes look cooler, a lot cooler, um, and just give a certain feel to your scene. Add fog, you know, and yeah. So that's pretty much it for the intro to the sceneKit scene editor. I think it's cool and I think it's awesome, and I encourage you guys to jump into it, download Xcode if you don't have, and try seeing what you can actually create. And what I like about using sceneKit for game development, that's why I just have my fingers crossed that one day it makes it to AAA games, is the scripting language. Swift is one of the easiest languages I've ever learned in my life. In my opinion, it's easier than Python to learn. And it has a whole lot of cool features that you guys will love and enjoy, especially as a beginner and as a noob. I encourage you to pick up Swift first. All right, that's about it. Thank you so much, boys and girls. If you guys enjoy content on sceneKit, I'll be releasing content on sceneKit, SpriteKit, Gameplay Kit, GameKit, all sorts of cool things that Apple offers indie developers to get up and going and flying. I will be making content on that. And let's learn these things together, boys and girls. If you guys enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel, leave a like. If you don't, leave a dislike, but leave a comment along with that, so I can learn how to make the content a lot better. I think with every video released, it's just gonna get better, all right? Um, right. Thank you very much. That's about it for today.